Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. I'm your host today. I'm your moderator. I'm Emma Buckland, and I'm a principal analyst at STL Partners. So in our discussion today, we are going to look at AI inference workloads and investigate with our panelists whether telco infrastructure is ready for such workloads and under which scenarios and for which type of use cases does this inferencing need to take place at the edge. And if time permitting, we'll also assess whether the telco assets need to be modernized for telcos to be able to fully embrace this potential monetization opportunities that AI brings in. Hi, Alberto.
Hello, everyone.
So we have a very nice panel with us today with 3 participants. So we have Prakash, Nicolas, and Alberto, who will need, I think, to put himself to unmute himself. And in fact, I won't introduce the panelists. I would like to for them to introduce themselves and also to explain to the audience how their job, their day-to-day job relates to the topic of the panel today, which is on AI inference workloads. So Alberto, you have quite a long job description, and you also have 2 roles. So I'm really curious, well, I know actually, but I'm sure the audience is very curious to understand your role as chair of the, and I have to read my notes here, important project of common European interest for next generation cloud and infrastructure and services. That's one aspect of your day-to-day jobs. And also you are, I think, VP Innovation at OpenNebula Systems. So tell us a little bit more, and then we'll move on to the other panelists.
Great, thank you very much. And also thank you for the invitation to this panel. I'm also happy to share this panel with my colleagues. Yeah, it's even more complex. I'm the chair of the Industry Facilitation Group, which represents the more than 120 companies and organizations, European organizations behind the project. And the project is this, as you said, important project of common European interest on next generation cloud infrastructure and services. So we've made it especially confusing and complex to avoid people understand what we do. So yeah, I mean, it's actually the largest. I like to define it as the largest open source project in the history of the European Union, but it's probably the largest open source project in the history of the world, basically. So there's never been 3,000 million euros put together to develop technologies together. So it's a project that is through the European Union. So the Commission, but also the member states, mobilizing this 3,000 million euros in co-investment and public aid, state aid, and private investment to build European cloud and edge computing software technologies. So it's really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And just to be clear, this is not about building infrastructure. That's a different project, which in fact we'll describe during the panel. This is about building logical assets, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, there are many different companies. I mean, OpenNebula Systems itself is a tech provider, an open source tech providers, but there are also colleagues from the telecom industry. There are also cloud providers. There are also end users like Fincantieri or Deutsche Bahn, Mondragon Corporation. Some people that actually understand that they have to get control back of the technologies that they need to operate their cloud environments. Okay. But the infrastructure is something different. Yes, the physical infrastructure.
Thanks, Alberto. So let's move to Nicolas.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So Nicolas Homo. I'm a Director of Strategy and Transformation at Orange. I work on the telco cloud, more specifically, hence my presence here on this panel. So within Orange, I have a mix of, let's say, strategical responsibilities and operational responsibilities. Strategical responsibilities because this has been mentioned by Alberto. I'm representing Orange within the European mechanism called IPCEI for the cloud. And also I'm the co-chairman of the governing board of the Sylva project, which is a very important project for Orange, but not only for Orange, for all the telco ecosystem. It's an open source telco cloud project hosted under the Linux Foundation. And I have also operational responsibilities because my entity within Orange is responsible for delivering, deploying, and operating our private telco cloud solution. It's called Orange Telco Cloud. It's currently deployed in 20 affiliates of the Orange Group across Europe and Africa. And it's hosting, give or take, 40% of the network function of the whole group as I speak. So happy to be with you today and looking forward to answering your questions, Emma.
Excellent. Thanks, Nicolas. And last but not least, over to you, Prakash.
Hi, my name is Prakash Suman. I work as a Senior Director of Analytics and Automation at UScellular. I lead the AI initiatives at UScellular, primarily focusing on two aspects of it, how AI can be used and developed to improve operational efficiencies within OSS and BSS operation. And also, how can AI be used to generate new revenues for telecommunication industry itself. And I have personal interest in working on AI. And that has led me to kind of think about how AI can be used to generate, some stalled businesses growth that we have seen in revenue for operators across globally, not just in the United States.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's get stuck in, right? So I'm going to ask the big question. Is the current telco infrastructure capable of supporting AI inference workloads at scale? But I think more importantly, I also want to understand, and I will start with you, Prakash, and then you, Nicolas, under which scenario will that capability be needed at the edge? Because obviously there's various places in the network when that AI inferencing could take place. So why and under which scenario does it need to take place at the edge? Is this needed now, or will this be needed in the future? And do you have some sort of time scale as to when that might be needed? So either of you, Prakash or Nicolas, if you want to bring your perspective, and I know that perhaps you have slightly different perspective because obviously you come from different parts of the world.
Yeah. Let me at least set up in a way that I think the way I'm thinking about it today. Obviously, the AI adoption is growing with both AI and agentic AI applications are growing tremendously, and I think McKinsey, has projected that the CAGR growth is about 30% of data center growth centers, and that's going to be from today about 100 gigawatt capacity to somewhere around 300 gigawatt capacity by 2030. So that is about the market difference, about 200 gigawatt of data center capacity. That is the market capture available for telco to participate in. I don't think telco is the only business that is trying to participate in that. So that's sort of a market space. And I think there's a value chain that needs to happen. Today, AI inference jobs that these data centers are running is only 15 to 30%, but estimation is by 2030 or somewhere in the next 5 years, that inference job is going to be the majority job. So today is not the most prominent, the compute happening, but inference is going to increase. Now that's driven by user use cases. And I think for telecommunication, given they have distributed geographical data centers, or data, networking capability across the geographical area, which is much, much bigger than hyperscalers or others, because those are centralized infrastructure. I think that creates a significant opportunity for operators. My sense is that is going to be driven primarily by real-time inference jobs, applications such as industrial automations or smart homes, and things like that will demand that sort of edge inference ability where you need a certain amount of latency, lower latency applications. And I think telcos are very well positioned to do that. And that this is a little bit of an evolving market in my mind, specifically, as you said, I think telcos are positioning themselves. In North America, there's good partnerships that are happening in developing edge data centers. People are investing in that. But I think the marketplace is still evolving. And in my sense is it's not necessarily ready now, but it's two aspects of it. One is build it, they will come aspect, and or build it to the suit. I think there's a little bit of capital investment opportunity there, which is what is somewhat evolving itself. And so that's my sense. In the next 3 to 5 years, I believe this market is going to evolve. Telcos will play a very important role given their capacity and geographical position that big hyperscalers or other emerging smaller initiatives don't have right away already.
Okay, so if I recap, you're saying that the AI inference jobs will increase massively, and it makes sense for them to take place at the edge because there's a need for low latency for certain use cases. And no, the edge isn't ready yet. It might be ready with the right partnerships. And you're, I think, talking mainly in terms of private partnerships.
Private partnership, and sometimes use case driven. I think it depends on how much telco can capture that value chain that exists. Today, as I was saying, most inferences are happening at the data centers, and centralized data centers, or on the device itself. But there's going to be a need because edge devices, or CPEs don't have that much compute power. So there's a balance. So those concentration of compute environment will have to spread across the edge. And I think that's where telcos can play a very important role in delivering those use cases.
Okay, thank you very much. So over to you, Nicolas. Give us your European and EMEA perspective.
So it's like a political hearing. You ask one question, but it's actually a multitude of questions. So first of all, what I would like to do is, you talked about the edge. And the funny thing, when I talk about the edge, is everyone has its own definition of the edge. So, for instance, edge can be, the device, like the phone or an access box. It can be some cloud capabilities on-prem for a company. For an hyperscaler, it's going to be anything outside of my centralized availability zones. And when you talk to a telco, so I'm going to give my view on the edge for a telco, is that one of the transformation we have is a virtualization, cloudification of our network functions. So when we look at the geographically decentralized sites, we're talking about the RAN, the radio access. So usually when a telco talks about the edge, it's thinking, okay, I will have, or I already have started deploying the virtualization or the cloudification of my RAN, maybe with Open RAN even. So I will deploy some computing capabilities, let's call them edge nodes, why not? And I'm going to use it for my virtualizing my RAN. Might as well extend the capability to host something else. Can be applications for the edge. And these applications can be anything. One of them can be executing the runtime for the inferences, the AI inferences. So that's a promising use case because currently the edge business around the RAN, centered around the RAN, is for me is just something to become. We don't see it yet. Now the question was, is the telco cloud ready for that? The telco cloud, I think when you create something, you go for the main use case. And if we talk about the RAN, the main use case is the RAN. And then this is really the focus of our providers is to do that. Now I talked about the Sylva project, and it's an important one because in Sylva, and from the beginning of the project, was started in 2022, in the roadmap, Sylva is a telco cloud solution to address the core network, the RAN, and also the edge use cases. So it's good because the first features will be implemented, I think, by July this year. So I'm going to say, technically speaking, telco cloud is not yet fully ready to do it, but it's getting there. And it will be, because I think it's a real business opportunity for the telcos. And now if we talk business, and I think Prakash, you already mentioned it, this will require some important CapEx investment. And so when you look at the business perspective, if I'm straightforward, I really believe AI inferencing is one of the most promising use case, really, that I've seen for the edge. It's still a bit uncertain, so there is a part of risk. And when you want to lower the risk in a business, I see two possible ways. Part technical business, private partnerships with other companies, or you can go for public support. Alberto is there, so I'm not going to go too far into that, but I think the IPCEI for Europe is exactly the tool to bring this kind of support. And I think it's going to be needed for the operators to make this kind of investment. And now we can talk about the benefits, the position of telcos, but I think maybe we can come back later on the advantages telcos have over other actors in the ecosystem.
Well, I think perhaps one last point I wanted you to give your view on, because for Prakash, he said that one of the main advantage of using the edge for inferencing was low latency. And is that also your view, in particular in the European and in your region?
Okay. I wanted to make a not too long answer to leave time for Alberto.
Don't worry, we'll go to Alberto and he'll have plenty of speaking time.
Okay, so my view is that latency is one thing. More importantly, for the customers we have started to discuss with, is the security. If a company has a site and is executing inferences on the edge node that is closer to the site, then the data will travel less than if it has to go to a centralized data center. So security is there. The traffic as well will be reduced. And also there is a matter of sovereignty. Let us, there are more chances for an operator or European operator to be able to provide a sovereign edge service than for hyperscalers, for instance. And it depends. There are some companies that are going to be, they're going to need that. Some others, they won't care at all. It depends on your customers. So I'd say more than latency, it's really the proximity, the security, the fact that the telco is a trusted partner because of the way we are regulated. And also, one of the phenomena is that centralized data centers, they are, for them, they're very concentrated, very powerful. But there is a queue. And if you have, let's say, a closer edge node, then this queue is going to be non-existent or very limited. So it might be faster to execute your inferences on an edge node than in a centralized data center. That's a possibility. So in a nutshell, I would say that's the benefits we see. Regarding latency, if you had asked me a few months ago, I would have said, you know, with Gen AI, it's human to AI interactions. Yeah. The latency is more on the execution of the inference. The network delays, not so big. When we have this conversation, we have a 3 milliseconds delay, perfectly acceptable for us. So not a big issue. But now there's a change in the ecosystem, the AI agents, and the fact that these agents will soon exchange together, interact together. So they will have much more exchanges. And if you accumulate even the smallest latencies, then it might become a problem for this agent-to-agent intercommunication. So I think latency might become more important than it used to be a few months ago because of these agent-to-agent exchanges.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's turn to Alberto. So we have just discussed that the telcos are well placed to provide facilities at the edge for this AI inferencing, but what other players could also provide that edge? What other, can you give us perhaps your perspective from where you sit at the IPCEI-CIS? What other players could also play in that particular part?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, obviously, I mean, the telcos are very well placed for that. What we're talking here is like this kind of competitive advantage that this penetration in the territory offers the other companies apart from hyperscalers. I mean, in the end, we're talking here about competing against hyperscalers, right? So the tool, this advantage the advantage that European players have, or the European market, is precisely that one. So the hyperscalers don't have this capillarity. They focus on big data centers, which brings many benefits, obviously, in terms of also managing this kind of homogeneous architectures and resources. On the other hand, the edge, we expect the edge to be much more heterogeneous, much more complex to manage these dozens or hundreds of different providers at some point with thousands of nodes. I mean, the objectives for the European Commission is to have this kind of 10,000 edge nodes across the European Union by the end of the decade. So that's 10,000 nodes, presumably from hundreds of new providers or existing providers. So the telcos have this potential to offer these resources much quicker across the territory. They always have, as Nicolas mentioned, I mean, they already have these capabilities at the edge, at their network, at the edge of the network. So theoretically, it should be easy. It's also true that we are already running late. I mean, with edge computing, without the AI component, the promise or the expectation was also that the telcos were going to be leading this process, the deployment of resources, and that hasn't happened for a number of reasons. So is AI inference going to save this the whole concept of edge computing or telco edge computing? Well, let's see. We also have to understand that there are other players in the market, and we have to help other companies and other actors in the market to. That's my cat, by the way. You see some me going black. I will introduce that to you. the extra speaker. So we have to understand that there are other companies, and there is a big potential also in other companies that have also this penetration in the market to become edge infrastructure providers. And part of the objectives of the IPCEI, this one and future ones, is to help these companies become cloud providers and edge providers. I mean, you have examples in Europe like a Stack IT coming out of a retailer industry. We have people in the energy sector that are interested in coupling computing resources with green energies. We have railway operators that are also interested in using their infrastructure, their facilities to offer these new cloud services. So there are a lot of interest. Telco cloud has to be there, and telcos have to lead this process. But we need many other companies across many different sectors to become edge infrastructure providers for AI and other workloads. And
okay,
the IPCEI will help, but there's also the risk that everyone is waiting for IPCEI funding or the state aid to help in introducing these risks, and that is also preventing private investments on their own. So that's also, I mean, the risk with this kind of mechanisms.
So we have a question from the audience, which in fact marries quite well with the third question I wanted to ask you. So I'm going to merge the two together. So we've heard a fair amount about what it would take technically to actually be able to make the edge capable of dealing with AI inferencing workloads. But one person from the audience very rightly mentioned the fact that this is obviously not just a technical challenge. There's an organizational mindset change also that needs to happen. And obviously this dismantling of data silos, which is quite pervasive within telcos. So I think perhaps starting again with our telco panelist here, what is your perspective on that particular question? Technical challenge, yes, but what about the other challenges? So the organizational one, as we mentioned, the data one, the commercial one, which we have also touched upon. Prakash, do you want to get us started on that and give your perspective?
Yeah, I think it is a cultural shift, mind shift in my mind, because today services that telco provides for consumers, and it's very repetitive, and it's very it's not customized service. It's not a white glove service. So it's good. It's a culture change, because you not only will have to be a seller but a buyer as well, depending on what sort of service you go through. It could be capacity selling, if it is pure like a GPU as service type of selling. So you need a different type of sales organization. Today's sales organization is not designed to sell capacity of the compute. Obviously, it's a risk benefit sort of investment as well, because as Nicolas was saying, it's a capital intensive investment, where you make choices between what type of capital investment one has to do. And you have to have a knowledge of AI and AI components and how those economics work. And so that's going to change the way solutions are designed for enterprises. And you have to really be consultant in some way, depending on, industrial partnerships, where you could create end-to-end solutions, whether you're a single cloud provider or you're a multi-cloud provider or part of a multi-cloud provider. So these sort of evolution that is beyond technical aspects of it, which is a transformation of telco to become an active participant in the AI ecosystem, to be able to do this sort of business development. I think that's very important. And then obviously, if you think from BSS perspective today, the charging and it's very focused on consumer and consumer products or B2B products. It is not focused on these sort of AI ecosystem and compute management. Today, hyperscalers do those sort of billing and system. So you have to evolve there too. You have to evolve infrastructure and your people and the processes to be able to really deep dive into these sort of emerging business use cases.
Okay, thanks, Prakash. Nicolas, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think we telcos need to do our transformation internally, because in the question, there is a mix between what we need to do internally to fully leverage the benefits of AI to operate our networks, and there is also the transformation our customers will have to undergo as well to make their data available. Because I think any company, telco or not, will have to have data governance, all these small details you need before really leveraging AI. So this is a classical transformation. What I would like to add is that because we talked about Europe and the IPCEI, I don't think we can create one big champion, of edge, and this will be several different actors, telcos, cloud service providers, others, maybe new operators. I think what's really important if you want to be successful, and it's not only for Europe, might be for the world as well, is that we need to ensure interoperability of these solutions. If I make a parallel, with telcos, we were successful in setting up the roaming for the calls. It seems obvious now, but a few decades ago, it wasn't so obvious. We need to succeed the same. We need to do the same for the edge. And we will have different providers, maybe different technologies. If we ensure the interoperability and the simplicity for the end customers, aka the business market, then we will have something that is much more appealing and that will accelerate the development of this business. And that's why I need to mention an initiative which is called the Edge Federation. It's also within the Cloud IPCEI. It's important because it relies on the simple fact that there will be different actors. Everyone will have its own edge orchestration. We just need to make this edge orchestration federated, connected together. So if I'm a company and I want to deploy something, a workload, whatever, in France, Spain, Germany, Italy, etc., I don't have to sign X contract. I can sign one, and thanks to this federation of the edge service, I will have capabilities over a much larger footprint in a very simple way. So this is a simple promise, but I'm going to make the link with what Prakash was saying. It requires a very complicated BSS. So we need to work on that because the BSS tailored for the edge is still something we need to work, all of us, not only the telcos, but we really need to work on that. It's something we're going to have, and that is not going to be simple.
And is that something you see as developing internally, or do you expect vendors to be able to step up and provide you with what you actually need?
My preferred approach, honestly, when you have to develop something jointly, you can do a joint venture, but it's complex, it's heavy, or you go for an open source project, which is, a community open source project, where companies can contribute, can use the technology, and can also influence the roadmap. Because if you have several actors, then there will be competition between two, three standards, and we will lose time. It's very possible to have one technology developed jointly because we believe it's a commodity in an open source project, and then companies create products, that are not for free, based on that technology. But at least, technically speaking, you win the integration immediately instead of losing years of competition. And in the end, one of them dies or several of them dies.
Okay. So I just want to go back to Alberto, perhaps for a bit more of a European perspective here, and aware that we have 5 minutes left. So Alberto, I think I or you mentioned, I can't remember in our introduction, the other European initiative about AI factories, and perhaps actually neither of us mentioned it, so let's mention it now. So can you perhaps explain to us the link between what you're working on with the IPCEI-CIS and what the AI factories of the EU is about, and how the two marry together?
Yeah, no, I think it also actually fits very well in the conversation that we were having. I mean, this question, but also the answers from Prakash and Nicolas. The challenge of on the one hand, building this edge across different providers and having this interoperability, but also the challenge in changing the mindset. Because the AI factor is a very good example of that. I mean, obviously, it's not just the edge. I mean, it's not that's just that we want to federate edge providers. It's that we want to build this cloud edge continuum, and that cloud edge continuum involves obviously companies from around the world. So the continuum is global. So we need companies to provide these resources in any place that are needed. So you think about a ship that's made by one of the IPCEI partners, Fincantieri, for instance. So they go to the Singapore harbor and they need some additional resources to their onboard data center, mini data center. They need this kind of flexibility. So we need this kind of interoperability, but also we need HPC resources to be incorporated into this continuum. So if you look at the way the European Commission looks at this challenge, we have these AI factories, this kind of very large investment in HPC centers to offer these resources to SMEs and startups to facilitate access to GPUs, for example, which is something that's quite scarce, as you know, and small companies don't have these resources. So mainly these HPC centers are becoming places where European companies can come and use these resources. But mainly they're expected to be used for training, right? Then the expectation is that cloud providers will become the place for fine tuning, and then the edge, mainly telcos, will offer these capabilities for AI inference. So this is another kind of continuum that it brings even more challenges in terms of bringing people together and this kind of different mindsets together. And it's a very good example because the practical problem of how do you make people coming from the HPC world and the cloud world to speak the same language, because SMEs and the startups, they don't need to. I mean, we cannot ask them to learn. I mean, parallel programming or use this kind of Slurm queues for their stuff. I mean, they need technologies they are familiar with. If we want to compete with hyperscalers, they need to have access across this continuum to technologies and interfaces they are used to. So this is also one of the challenges that we have to incorporate, combine these edge inference resources that, as Nicolas mentioned, are already working on very nice open source projects on interoperability, but also offering familiar interfaces to the users with things like the AI factories that are based on the traditional HPC technology stacks that are something completely different. And we have these two mindsets, they also have to be combined into this larger computational continuum.
Okay, thank you.
It's going to be fun.
So we had a few more questions, but I think with 1 minute left, I'm not going to try to unwrap any of them. So maybe I'll leave the panelists to get acquainted with the question themselves, and they feel like they can perhaps provide some element of answers to our audience today. Well, thank you very much, Prakash. Thank you, Nicolas, and thank you, Alberto, for this conversation. And I hope it was informative for the audience, and speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.